horrible history of illegal wars, and the way in which we conducted those illegal wars was even more terrifying than you can imagine. And one man who brought it to light to the Australian press, because he wasn't allowed to go through the proper channels, he approached politicians, he approached anyone who would listen to the hierarchy in the AIF, and nothing happened. So eventually he told the world, and now he's been prosecuted for it, and hopefully won't, but could easily end up in a long time in prison. I'd like to have David McBride giving us a bit of his worldly knowledge and his great support for Julian. Thank you, David.
They're selling strong and can look after Jake. I'm just here, mate. I've got very used to doing my Elvis impersonation, and now I can't stop it. It's interesting, you know, we've got the security service looking at it. It was very nice singing, Dennis, David. And it's almost like play school, you know, everyone's so ordered. I can see Robert and a nice little singing, and so no one can complain about. But that's good, you know. We are the reasonable people. It strikes me increasingly that we it's becoming a bit like the medieval era, you know, in that you've got the people who rule. They do so by force. There's no law. They sometimes will say, oh, the reason we're going to hang this person, the reason we're going to put this person in jail is such that he breached such and such a law or treason or something. But it was clear, and they probably thought they were pretty clever at the time because they got away with it. But the truth is, it was phony law, and they were just bandits wearing a crown, and the good people eventually stood up to them. We still have a monarchy, but a very controlled one for show, really. And what the people behind us, the people in Australia, a lot of them don't know too much about history, but a lot of they represent the bad kings. The people putting Assange in jail represent the King Johns, Richard II, and my favourite, Charles I, who was executed for thinking that he was above the law. He wasn't. And the law comes first. And we've got out of control at the moment where the United States believes that their survival or their prospering is more important than law. They've forgotten, if it was ever true, that their nation only exists to support the law. The law doesn't exist to support their nation. But let's get down to tin tacks. And it's interesting, the people, you know, behind us are watching us as if we're going to do something dangerous. I used to be in the security service. I used to be in the British Army. I loved it. Because in those days we worked for what was right. And I could see we have lost our way in the security services. Anthony Lowenstein, a guy you might know, just sent me an article then that the investigation into the British Special Forces is accelerating, something that I helped contribute to, and I think it's like 100 cases of suspected murder in Afghanistan by the British Special Forces. You know, they covered it up even less cleverly than the Australian ones. They're obvious murders. So the people standing behind us represent murderers, basically. People in uniform who killed people, killed Afghans, and I don't think they wouldn't kill Australians if it came to it. They would. Some people say, oh, you there's inherent racism and say what goes on overseas should stay overseas, and murders overseas don't really matter. The same people wouldn't say that if their own sons and daughters were murdered in Australia. They wouldn't be saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. Soldiers are soldiers, and that's what they get up to." They'd be coming to people like you and me, and they'd be saying, "Help me, God, help me. Stand up for me. Whatever it takes, I want you to take this case as far as it can go." Not you people. You people get that. You people are the absolute backbone of this country, and as I always say, I really believe we're going to win now. I wish the one regret I have is I didn't get a bet on myself about 5 years ago when I would have been about 100 to 1. And now with Robert Smith and Barrett Jickley, and every day there's another scandal in the establishment, and people are saying, "Really? You're going to put this guy in jail?" And it's very questionable if he's done anything wrong at all. And you've got all these people from Stuart Robert to Ben Robert Smith. And there's too many to list. I'd be here all day. Scott Morrison, General David Hurley, you know, the leader of the Defence Force at the time when I allege he knew about the war crimes. He signed off on the secret ministries, apparently in payment for sort of like some sort of dodgy $18 million charity. And the most obscene thing of all, this was a charity for leadership.